Hello all, this is Daniel Berman, USCF Expert 2131, and I've been away for a while and I'm back and I want to show you a game I played on the internet against a 1900 player, and I was the black side of a French Tarrasch. This is a known variation where white can actually win an exchange, but black has a very good game. And white generally in high level doesn't go for this exchange win because black gets such great play. So I would like to show you this game and maybe a couple side variations too. My opponent played e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, and this is the main line of the first move of the Tarrasch variation of the French defense. Knight f6, this is the classical response to the Tarrasch. e5, knight f d7, bishop to d3, c5, c3, protecting the center, knight c6, attacking the center, knight e2, protecting the pawn, cd, cd, and f6. Normally, white will play ef6, knight f6, knight f3, bishop to d6, castles, castles, and bishop f4. May continue something like this: bishop takes, knight takes, and knight e4. And I'm attacking the knight on f4, and if he goes bishop takes, I can take with the pawn and I actually win a piece. So bishop takes knight is a bad move. It wins a piece because he'll have two pieces attacked. He can't defend both. So that's one line, knight ef6, and then knight takes f6. And another possibility to look at, which is a blunder, is f4. It looks like it strengthens your center. However, because your king's uncastled, you could get in trouble. And I'll show you what black should do here. fe5, fe5, and black has a great move here if you can find it. And it's knight takes d4. It's a temporary piece act because if you go knight takes d4, queen h4 check, g3, and queen takes d4. And white is not very happy. One other thing I wanted to show you, which was in this variation, if you play f4, you could recapture with a d-pawn where you don't lose a pawn, but I get bishop c5, and you cannot castle. f4 is a blunder. So that brings us to the game that I played, where my opponent played another alternate move, off move, knight f4. And if you look at this, his threat is first to attack the e6 pawn. The other one is threatening queen check on h5, and I have very few moves. If I block with the pawn after queen check, he has knight takes pawn, and if I go pawn takes knight, my rook falls. But it's all under control. It's all known stuff. So I continue playing. Knight takes d4, holding my e pawn, and he goes with a check, and I play king to e7, knight to g6, hg6, and it looks like he can win my rook, which is true. He can win the rook, but to take it immediately would be a blunder because I would have knight takes e5. And if you look at this position, I have a piece and two pawns for the exchange. I'm attacking his bishop on d3. I have a giant center, and he's still underdeveloped. And he only has one piece attacking me. I'm also guarding g6. So in this line, black's just winning. On hg6, instead of going queen takes rook immediately, my opponent played ef6 check first, which is still book. All this is still book. And I recapture with the knight. Now he can take, and my pawns aren't as good. The huge center is not there, and he didn't lose a pawn. And now he's still attacking, and he's attacking my g6 pawn with his bishop. So I defend it with king f7. Here, my opponent castled, and I want to show you why this is so dangerous for white. If you were to play a move where lots of people may play, a move like knight f3 or even knight to b3, I have bishop b4 check, winning the queen on h8. So he can't develop that knight. So instead, on king f7, my opponent castled. I play e5 and I start going for my big center. Now it's my turn to play. If you look at his game, it's hard for him to develop. How do you develop this bishop on c1? Where do you put your queen? So he has a lot of questions to answer. And I'm getting this big center. And we're still in book, and there's two book moves here. One's better than the other. Knight b3 and knight f3. My opponent chose knight f3. And you may be asking yourself, well, on knight takes f3, doesn't that double the pawns? Well, it does. And White wants to live with that, but he needs to strengthen his center, especially this e4 score. He doesn't want my pawns to roll so quickly down the center. And this is still all book. So I play bishop f5, and I want him to take, and he takes. I play gf5, and now look at my center. I got a passed d pawn. The queen's out of play. He doesn't even have a check on h5. And now he realizes that, and he wants to. And one of the things I noticed here is I got a huge center. I mean, I'm up a pawn, so I'm technically down 1 point because he has the exchange, and I have an extra pawn for giving up the exchange. So I'm down 1 point. But I'm not nervous about trading down pieces. So I went forward and I played bishop e7, willing to do a queen trade because I'm not too afraid with my king and my minor pieces against his rooks. It's hard for his rooks to break through because I got the big center. So he preserves his queen, queen h3, queen to d7, guarding, rook. And this is, again, proves my point. I'm not afraid to trade. And here he plays bishop f6, and now he has a check on h5. And I have two moves. I may have played the incorrect move. I probably should have gone king to e7 or even king g8. I don't see there being a problem. But I played g6, which was a blunder. But not a big blunder, just a minor blunder. And h4. Now he wants to play h5 and undermine the defense of f5, and hopefully get his rook in. But I see this trick that if I play queen to d8, attacking that pawn, and if he were to push, for example, here, I have queen check picking up the rook on c1. So instead, he plays king to g2. I play d4. I'm getting my pawns going. What good are pawns? Pass pawns if you don't use them. And then sometimes that's another thing you'll notice. If you make a threat, you sometimes make your opponent jump. Rook e1. So now I'm not too worried about his rook getting in on the c file. And those pawns are protected. And he is threatening taking that pawn right now because the bishop's pinned against my king. So here, again, I'm not afraid to trade down. And this forces a queen trade. And he's forced to take. And I walk towards the center. And now I still can't play e4, but if you look at that weakness on h4, he has to worry about that. So I happen to have bishop f6. Now if he moves his rook and guards that pawn, he's using his rook just to guard a single pawn, and I get e4 in, and my pawns start rolling. So he decides to drop that pawn and go for activity. And I get to play e4, pawn takes, king e2, bishop takes h4, rook c7, and d3. And if you were to go back, he played king d1, but if you were to go back to e1, I would simply have e3, and he can't take, and I win another pawn. So I'm doing very good here. So in this variation, he plays king to d1, and I take, and I'm just winning here. Takes, guard my pawn, check, check. So here my opponent resigned because there's no way that he can stop the pawn push to e2 and then eventually e1 queen without giving up his rook. And I'm guaranteed to get at least one queen. So I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.